Have you guys ever tried to do the retake mode in the practice range on hard without releasing shift? Yeah, it's really freaking hard. Near impossible, actually. Are these bots just overtuned? Well, maybe a little sometimes, but for the most part, no. These bots will land ridiculous flicks on you and absolutely sit you down, but so will players in real games. This is the reason that shift peeking is so bad, and the only real way that you're able to beat this practice is by implementing the common method referred to as slicing the pie. Slicing the pie is a real military tactic that involves clearing individual angles one at a time in an attempt to slowly work your way around a corner. In Valorant, when peeking angles, you want to make sure that your peeks are as fast as possible so that the enemy doesn't have as much time to react to it. This is also a double-edged sword though, because when your enemies have less time to react to your peeks, you also have more time to react and land your shot. Take this clip for example where I have a sheriff and I swing a player with an Odin. I utilize the tactic that we talk about in our spider method course of preparing the swing, and then I fast peek silently and land a massive pick in the round, pulling some of the attention off of my teammates and helping them get a free sight. Now, do you think I win this fight if I shift peek into an Odin right here? Of course not. I would have gotten mowed down horribly. Here's an example of an Ascendant 1 player that I've been coaching up from Platinum and an issue that he's running into due to lazy peeks like this. The problem is, once you get towards the higher ranks, players are going to have good crosshair placement and constantly sit you down if you're doing things improper. But if you swing angles quickly, if a player is holding that angle, you oftentimes will actually have the advantage just due to how swinger's advantage works. By preparing your swing and peeking the angle, you can easily sit down anyone who is holding you and look like a stud while doing it. The alternative is pretty bad though. If you shift peek into angles, you'll lose more fights than you should simply due to lazy fundamentals. For example, here's a clip of me killing a Jet player who even has knives online, but she peeks like such a bot that I ended up killing her first. Notice how this Jet is shift peeking and walking in a straight line towards tree. If she just swung along the back wall, she probably lands the kill onto me immediately, considering my crosshair placement was not prepared for a swing. But instead, she decided to break all of the general swing fundamentals. She got super close to the wall, held W and shift, and then slow peeked the angle. Even with knives, where she's faster than a normal shift peek, she still got rolled. Let's take a look at a different VOD where the player is also struggling with this issue. In this clip, notice how when the player goes for the pick onto the Sova, they're peeking backwards at the exact same time. They're basically trying to backpedal out of this corner at the same time as they're taking a duel, which is super bad. If you want to take this fight, you have to take it confidently, otherwise you will lose 90% of the time. Notice how the Sova is posted up on an angle and it makes him look like a god tier player, but the Sova in question is in a gold lobby. This is why it feels like you're getting one-tapped. And later in this game, take a look at how this Sova peeks him. Notice how fast the Sova swings out, he barely even has time to react. Hopefully by now you're starting to see how important this is. This is exactly the thing that we cover in our Master Minutes Movement course that details exactly how you can start swinging angles like a pro in as short amount of time as possible. Mastering the fundamentals can take time. A lot of time. But our courses are designed to take new players and instantly get them climbing in no time by teaching concepts in terms that are so simple, even a baby can do it. We'll not only teach you the proper fundamentals on how to peek angles and win more gunfights, we will also teach you literally how to dodge bullets and make even the best enemies look like silvers. If you feel like you're getting one-tapped in every single gunfight, this is what you need to get back on top and start carrying your matches. Don't just take our word for it though, we offer a 5-division rank up guarantee, so if you don't climb while actively using our service, you will get your money back, no questions asked. More on that at the end of the video. Another thing to keep in mind with getting one-tapped is that oftentimes it comes down to the angles that you are playing. As we already established, you shouldn't hold shift when peeking angles because you want to peek as fast as possible. This is so important in fact that if you swing a player quickly and you're prepared for the angle they're holding, the person swinging should have the advantage. For this reason, if you're playing a lot of common angles, you're likely familiar with this image. He sat down immediately at the start of the round, and it's because he's just dry holding an incredibly common angle. So should you just not hold angles? Listen to how I explained this to our Ascendant student earlier. So notice how you're playing this angle right here. This is what we call an on angle, right? The on angle basically is the common angles that players will play. That's also where people are going to peek. So if you're familiar with the concept slicing the pie, that's how normally people are going to peek angles if they're like lurking or if they're approaching an angle slowly, if they're dry peeking an angle basically, right? So if people are pushing, right, don't get me wrong, they'll shoot their Sova Recon, they use like a Rain of Blind, or they'll like run out here, right? But if people are swinging an angle, they're going to peek you very decisively. This is an off angle right here where you're playing. This is going to be the on angle right behind you, but you're a little bit to the left. So there's going to be a slight off angle right now. And because of this off angle, notice how the Jet's going to end up missing her first shot. You don't actually shoot first because you're walking forward, but the Jet's shot goes right to the right of your head. And that's because she is aiming at this angle and you are on this angle right here, right? She ends up missing just slightly because you're on a slightly different angle. So she was slow peeking like this, just like we were saying, right? Notice how she's walking up, she's playing contact. She's peeking each individual angle. So I was going to load into game and I was going to show you kind of what this looks like so you can get an idea. So I'm an attacker and I'm coming up to clear A main, right? And if I'm lurking here and my team is making pressure somewhere else, what I'm going to do is I want to clear this as efficiently as possible, as safely as possible without making noise. And the safest way to do that is to only peek one angle at a time, right? So I'm going to do something like this, right? And I'm going to clear this first angle. I don't see anything. Notice how I strafe out like that really quickly. It's called slicing the pie, right? So I peek this and now I'm going to peek this, right? I don't see anybody there. Sick. Now I'm going to place my crosshair here and I'm going to peek this, right? Okay, sweet. I don't see anything right there, right? So now I'm going to peek this, right? Now I'm going to keep doing this until I either walk out of A main and hopefully hopefully I don't die, right? Or I land a pick onto somebody, right? So I find them playing an angle like this, right? And I'm finding the kill. There's gonna be somebody here, is kind of the logic. Somebody has to play here to get info. Now, there are other ways that you can do it, is you can have like a cipher cam that like watches the walkout, or you have like a killjoy turret. But if you don't have any of that, somebody has to peek for info. So maybe they're jump peeking. This is why people jump peek, is because angles like this are bad to hold. I don't want to just sit here and hold this, because if somebody's peeking this angle quickly like that, I'm gonna get sat down. If I'm sitting like in a spot like this, and somebody peeks that angle quickly, they're just gonna sit me down every time, right? But that's why when you're able to walk out like that, you actually land the kill onto the jet, and you actually live. As we talked about, the difficulty is that you need to gather information somehow on if players are walking through the choke point. If your job is to hold A, then you can't just hide and not do anything. In higher tiers of play, as I mentioned, players will implement jump peeking if they're solo holding. This allows them to safely gather information without really risking getting one-tapped. Other options, as we mentioned, are playing off angles. The off angle our Yoru player ended up in wasn't great, but it was enough to allow him to get away with his life this one time. Angles like this only really work for agents who have dismiss abilities though, such as Yoru, Jet, Reyna, and Chamber. This doesn't mean that only these agents can play off angles though. There are off angles accessible to every agent if they know how to find them. For example, this is a fantastic off angle on Sunset that almost feels so stupid I wouldn't be surprised if it gets removed. It's so difficult to clear out this corner, and because of that, you can easily pick up kills as players are trying to push towards pillar. Or on split. Although this angle could be considered a one and done, it's actually closer to a 1.5 because the general spacing on players isn't going to be perfect when they push onto site. So you can oftentimes pick up the first kill and then dip into cover behind the billboard. In this case, our Yoru player TP's out, but there's really nothing that could have stopped a Killjoy or an Astra from playing a position like this if the round called for it. Or if you're playing an agent with some sort of tripwire or alarm bot, you don't even need to hold the angle to get info. In this case, you can always peek off of that utility and land the kill in that way. I've been playing a ton of Killjoy recently while I've been working on our brand new Killjoy course for the SkillCapped website, so that's what most of my recent kills actually look like. In this clip, I actually combine a slight off angle with my turret to make it so when enemies peek into C, they look over at my turret and I can land the kill onto them safely from backside. Even without the turret though, you can often catch a great timing on players walking into sight from this position, and I utilize this angle on pretty much every agent. Or during this round, I swing off of my alarm bot and my molly because it's just infinitely safer than if I try to post up on this angle and hold the doorway myself. I just don't need to risk it, and I'd much prefer to choose what gunfights I take strategically rather than needing to risk my life in a situation where the enemy is clearly prepared for me to be holding that angle. Or in an agent like Raze's case, you can play angles that are elevated and much more difficult to pre-aim, as you see from Tarek right here. Basically, every single agent has ways that they can augment their angles that they play so that you don't need to just hold an angle. You should always try to look for some sort of advantage in any gunfight that you take. Whether it's an off angle, a piece of utility, weapon advantage, or a teammate to swing off of, basically every single angle that you're holding, there should be a reason that you're holding that angle. Let's just say you're doing all of these things right though, and you're still getting one-tapped. It's entirely possible that you just got unlucky. Gunfights in Valorant can always be boiled down to percentages. For example, the odds of me winning this fight were probably around 90%. The Jet has her knife out, and she clearly wasn't expecting me to be here. Now, I do have a Sheriff, so it is possible that I whiff here, but even if I do, she's still caught pretty dead to right. I'd have to severely whiff to mess this up. Basically no chance that this Jet kills me here, assuming I don't mess up. Let's talk about this fight though. There's probably about a 5% chance that I survive this peak. If you're Jet and you're holding this angle, you are pissed right now. The worst part is I actually got away with this engagement briefly afterwards. Despite peeking into 3 players, I was able to land a nasty flick onto one of them and get away to reapproach the round. I still lost, but I mean, did this Jet misplay? Not really. She had 2 teammates there to swing off of her. I can't rely on landing flicks like that. If you asked any coach, they'd say that this was a horrible peek. I even peeked the angle while holding W. Like, I did pretty much everything here wrong, and she still lost. That's just how Valorant works sometimes. Sometimes you land nasty flicks, sometimes the 3 and 15 Sova turns 90 degrees and 1-digs you. It's just the circle of life. The important thing to think about in these situations though is, was there anything I could have done better to increase my odds? Sure, this Sova landed a ridiculous shot on me and I definitely should have still won this fight, but why in the world am I peeking this close to the wall anyway? This is probably still an 80-20. but like it could have been a 95-5 considering if I had backed up more here, I'm not even convinced in this range he would one-hit me. This level of critical thinking is important because if you just chalk up all of your deaths to luck, then you're not really going to be learning a lot. Most commonly, your deaths won't be luck. Normally, there's something you could find that you did wrong, and it's super important that you're constantly thinking about these things. Otherwise, you'll never end up learning from your mistakes. A really simple reason that players get one-tapped a lot is because they just make way too much noise before they peek angles. Take a look at some of these kills from a DM that I played with a Deagle. I don't even consider myself an exceptionally talented aimer, but even I was still able to pre-fire players running around corners because it's just that easy. I'm not joking when I say that these are some of the easiest shots to hit. You can't just full sprint around a corner like this if you know that somebody could be holding you. You'll die pretty much every single time against good players. But sometimes you need to rotate in fast, which is completely understandable. In this case, the general tactic is to run a short distance until you reach the angle, jiggle to bait out a shot, and then swing. That way the player doesn't have the commodity of just pre-firing you off of the noise alone, and instead you get the chance to pull their crosshair so that when you swing, you could swing right past it and mess them up. If you just full sprint around the corner though, you kind of deserve to get one-tapped. You're announcing your position every step of the way, and it's completely unacceptable. Finally, the last reason you're getting one-tapped though is because you're crouching. Crouching is the easiest way to get yourself instantly killed in Valorant, and most players crouch far too often. Take it from the world champ himself.
Unbind crouch, never crouch. Very bad.
Crouching instantly makes you an incredibly stationary target, which is a huge problem. This will result in you essentially having to land your first shot or die quickly thereafter, since it will be so easy for the enemies to return fire. It also hurts your aim because you have to commit to a spray at that point and double down, which as if you don't crouch, you could stay on the move if you miss, quickly stop your spray, strafe while it corrects, and then go for a burst to finish the target off. It's generally going to be better for players to practice being mobile with counter strafing rather than to build up the habit of committing to crouch sprays, since as we mentioned, this will most often get you killed. To showcase this, in the background, take a look at our player in Deathmatch and watch all of the kills they get on players who are crouching. Especially with single fire weapons, players are normally aiming for the head anyway, so crouching makes them super easy to hit since it basically just locks them into place. If the player's head is constantly moving, it can be a nightmare to keep track of, but if they stop moving like this, they better hope that they land the first shot because otherwise they're a sitting duck. Alright though guys, before we wrap this up, let me tell you a little bit more about SkillCapped. So we offer a 5-division rank up guarantee, and we think that's a pretty crazy thing to offer. It's like your gym membership guaranteeing that you'll get ripped. Your local gym would go bust if they offered you that. Not us though, we've offered this for years because our service really does work. It works so well in fact that we are able to produce by far the largest catalog of premium Valorant guides on the internet. We add new courses every month. With over 1,000 guides curated into over 50 courses, no one could compare. We also have a direct line of communication with subscribers in our Discord so that you can get connected immediately to some of the best players in the game who will respond to all questions asked. Sign up today for as little as $6.99 a month if you are serious about improving. So that's going to be all for this one today. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.